Today is Tuesday, February 17th, 2015. My name is Ann Peskin. It is my honor and privilege today to interview Sandra Goldstein for the Jewish Historical Society of Fairfield County. Good afternoon, Sandra.
Ann.
Good seeing you.
And the same here, honey.
Can you state your name?
Sandra Goldstein.
And where were you born?
I was born in Brooklyn, and I was born in 1941. I'm 73, but I never tell anybody that.
Who were your grandparents? Tell us a little about your parents and
My
grandparents.
parents and grandparents, my mother's side of the family came from Poland, and my father's side of the family came from London. And my father came here when he was in the 6th grade, my mother when she was 18. And that was it. I never really knew my grandparents. Both died before I was born because I was born very late in my mother's reproductive cycle. She was 40 when she had me. So, and both grandparents were dead.
What did your father do for a living?
My father worked for the New York City Transit Authority.
Now, how did you ever get to Fairfield County?
Well, we were living in Brooklyn, Bob and I got married when we were both very young. He was 21, I was 20, and he is a CPA, and he got a job in Stamford right after we had our second child. So my older daughter was about 3, and Bethy was about 9-10 months old. And Bob got a job in Stamford and was commuting from Brooklyn to Stamford, and that was a very long commute. And so we decided to move here. We knew nothing about the community. As a matter of fact, I was really very much a New York girl then and did not want to move up here, but I also didn't want my husband commuting for hours each day.
Was your family at all involved in community service or in some form of politics?
Absolutely not. My family were staunch Democrats, but were totally uninvolved in politics, knew very little about it, other than if you were a Democrat, you were good. And that was it.
Where'd you go to college?
I went to Brooklyn College,
And when was that?
so I graduated in 1963.
And did you do anything in college with politics?
Well, you can say, in a way, I did more in terms of leadership, because I was president of my senior class in high school. I was president of my sorority, which Brooklyn College they were house plans. So I was president of my house plan at Brooklyn College. And I think that as such, you are in a political framework, even though it's more leadership than what we consider politics.
But you still had to campaign and were elected.
No,
No?
I didn't campaign to get elected. I was just nominated, and I guess nobody else wanted the job or something.
Did it influence you at all in the rest of your life, what you did as leadership?
Always, because I'm very much a person who wants to be in control. And so when you are a leader, you are in control. So I guess by default, that's what I did.
Who were your political heroes growing up?
Well, my family's political hero was Roosevelt. And so I grew up thinking that he was the end-all of people who were in politics and who held political office. But my real hero was John F. Kennedy. because while I couldn't vote for him, I was too young by a little. He just, I thought he was the most incredible person who could lead our country, and the fact that he was the first Catholic was very major to me.
Now, you almost said you defined or didn't define politics, you defined leadership. What do you think of politics?
Oh, to me, I can define politics, because when I finally got into politics in Stanford, I knew exactly why I was doing it. I define politics as the art of the possible. And especially when I first entered politics, when I was about 28, 29, and I believed everything was possible. I've since tempered my feelings somewhat, but I still believe that a good politician, a good political leader, and that's a much better way of putting it, a good political leader believes that he or she can make good things happen, good things for people, good things for the community. I also believe that a good politician does not put her finger in the air and see which way the wind is blowing, the way so many politicians do today, but gets a feel from her community, gets more than a feel, but reads all the information and then makes an informed decision, even if it is not exactly what an entire district wants, or state.
Now, when did you actually get into politics, and how?
1975, I ran in 1975 and I got elected in 1976, something like that.
For what office?
Board of Representatives. I had been very active in the National Council of Jewish Women, and I was their community affairs chairman or something like that. I loved that organization because that organization was more than just baking cookies and getting together with other women. That organization really, to me, represented wanting to do good things for the community. And one of the things we did was determine that our school buses were very unsafe. And we worked very, very hard as a little group of Jewish women to figure out how we could make these horrible school buses, which were in an inordinate amount of accidents that hit people, kids, etc., how to make them safer. We did research, and in some far away community, we found a template for stop arms on school buses, which are now all over the country. So Stanford may not have been the first community to get it on their school buses, but it led the pack in the country in getting those stop arms on buses. And to get that done, we had to lobby the school board, then lobby the Board of Finance and Board of Reps and the mayor, etc. You would think we were asking for the moon. But then, and it must have been like in 1979 or somewhere about that. No, I'm sorry.
Earlier.
It preceded my getting into pop, so 1974.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a big deal. It was a big deal for the community. I remember one of the members of the Board of Ed, because everybody in council had to call the members of the Board of Ed, and I remember one member saying to me in particular, you know, Sandy, it's a rough year. We have so many needs for our students. This can wait. And I remember saying, no, it can't wait. And if you make it wait, you do so at the peril of a child's life. And it passed through all the boards. And I think the appropriation we needed was something like $20,000. I mean, different time. And it made me feel that that we in council had accomplished a terrific thing. So that summer, I got a call from my city committee person, whose name, and another Jew who was elected to offices, was the 16th District City Committee.
Right.
City Committee. Julian Melmed.
Oh.
And Julian called me and said, Sandy, you're just the type of person we want in politics. I said, Julian, I have 2 little kids. I may want to go back to school. I don't know if this interests me. And it's a Republican district. And I'm a Democrat, and I'm not going to play a game about that. So he said, we'll help you. We think you would be terrific. And so I ran. I mean, it didn't take much convincing, because in my heart I always wanted to be in the political arena. And so I ran. I worked very hard with my running mate and with people helping me from all over. It was extraordinary. And I won. And every moment of my life, from the minute I started the campaign until election, all I did was eat, sleep, think of this campaign. And I remember my mother saying to me when I got elected, are you sure you weren't elected governor after all you've done to get this? But that was it. And I loved the Board of Representatives. It was very representative of the people in our city. And it was a great board to learn.
How long did you serve there?
I served from 1976 to 1991. I was president of the board for 10 years and was the first female president to serve on that board. And I chaired the finance committee for 4 years. So it was a lot of fun to be that engaged and to bring people together on different issues, number one, and to totally revamp the way the Board of Representatives did business.
Can you tell a story about one or more of your mentors? You mentioned Julian.
Well, Julian wasn't really a mentor.
Okay.
He was a political figure, but not a mentor. Mentors were Lynn Lakeman. Lynn was really a mentor. She was a friend and a mentor. She at that time was on the Board of Finance, very, very active on the board, a real leader, and wanted to get other women involved. And we developed a very close relationship, and she too was actively involved in doing the right thing, in working hard for the good of the citizens of the city, and not to get Joe Schmo a job, which is what some people are in it for, and they're in it for the wrong reason. But Lynn was there teaching and active and just a wonderful mentor.
What were some of the obstacles you faced?
Well, I shouldn't talk about obstacles for the Board of Representatives. Of course, that was a hard election the first time, and then even though I worked hard for the next 10 elections, there were not major obstacles. The obstacles I faced were when I ran for mayor.
Right.
When I ran for the Board of Reps, I was, for all 10 terms, the highest vote getter on the Board of Reps in the city, and not the district with the most population. And then my colleagues had, for 10 years, elected me to run this citizens board. So I did not think that being a woman and being Jewish would be a problem. But they both were. And so I would hear from my advisors that the scuttlebutt was she's too New York. Now, those were code words for she's Jewish. And the city at that time, and it may be less now or more now, I'm not sure, but the city was 10% Jewish, 40% Italian, about 30% Irish, and then everything else. So I did not believe, I really had some naivete about me. I just never believed that female and Jewish would negatively impact me as a candidate, and it did. And when I lost that election by the highest vote that anyone had ever received who ran, other than Stan Esposito, who I ran against and got more votes than me, but otherwise, no one had ever gotten more votes because the turnout was like astronomical. But I lost, and I felt that the two obstacles I faced would never change because I am a very, very, ethnically I'm a very strong Jew, and I'm a woman. So it wasn't going to change, and I wasn't going to bang my head against that wall, although many people felt I should. But I knew that once I lost that election, that was it, politically for me. But I had to stay in a position that would allow me to use my business skills, my leadership skills, my organizational skills.
Before we go on and talk about the next, where you did end up really wonderful, in the campaigning, you spoke about how you campaigned. You want to talk a little bit about what the campaign was like?
Well, I have said, some politicians say they love campaigning. I don't love campaign. I didn't love campaigning because when I campaigned, it took every minute of my life to the detriment of everything else around, because I had to, as a student, I had to know everything about everything. So I was always reading, always studying, always planning, always meeting with my campaign group, and you know, because you were very much a part of that, it just encompasses you, and you are on 24 hours a day or 15 hours a day, and you know, whatever. So it takes everything out of you, and it's very hard. So I don't love campaigning, and I didn't ever love campaigning, even when I ran for the Board of Reps. But I loved governing. I loved getting important things passed. And I loved being able to listen to what people needed and getting those needs fulfilled. So that was really the part of the political picture that I loved.
Did you raise much money, or what we would consider much?
We raised more money than anyone ever raised before. Every one of my friends from all over, everywhere contributed, and it's laughable what we raise now compared to what you need.
Do you remember how much it was?
Yes, I do. I raised $100,000 in 1991. That's when I ran. It was enormous. It was so enormous. But, and as my opponent didn't raise as much, but he won. so he did something right. But now you have to raise 10 times that to run, and it's really pathetic. It really is pathetic. And I spent a whole lot of time raising money because you have to. But I'll tell you a very, very wonderful story about raising money. The whole community was involved in my election. Primarily the Jew. I don't want to say primarily. I had a good part of the Irish community because Dan Malloy was my campaign manager, and I had a good part of the Italian community. But I had basically the whole Jewish community. And raising money was a constant, and we wanted to do more literature, and we wanted to send out more of this, we wanted to do more polling, and all of that stuff. And I remember I'm sitting at campaign headquarters, and I'm sitting with Dan Malloy, my campaign manager, and a few of my friends, and you kind of get like, you're worn out, and you're discouraged. And you can't show the public that you're discouraged, but you can sit with your closest allies. And Ellen was there, because Ellen was the party leader then, Ellen Campi, another Jewish woman. And we're sitting around and saying, this is so unbelievable. I do not know how I'm going to raise another cent. I said, it's unbelievable. I've already raised, I don't know, $60,000, and I still need more. It's just horrible. And somebody calls me from the other room. We were in the back room. Somebody calls me from the other room, and it was someone had just walked in with her grandchildren, and that someone was Yetta Adler. Now, Yetta and Mike Adler were mainstays of the Jewish Center community, and wonderful people. And Yetta came in with her delicious tribe of grandchildren, and they came in with not barrels, but pails of pennies for my campaign. And you know, it makes you cry to think of it today. So, and now these little kids, who when I see them hug me, and Sandy, the worst thing that ever happened was that you were a mayor. This is 21 years ago. They are all grown with their own children, and darling Yetter has long gone. But it like instilled me with what was necessary to take the final, few months and fundraising. That was necessary.
You talked about preparing. Now, you went through a number of debates, I'm sure.
We had about 10 debates. And I just, I was a very conscientious student at school, and I never changed. So to prepare for a debate was constant. I had a Bible. And so it's a hard job. Just chairing the fiscal committee on the Board of Representatives. I remember, and then I was really new on the board because it was my second term that I became chairman of fiscal. To understand the budget was like getting a master's, for me, not for anybody else perhaps. For me, it was like getting a master's degree in finance, because to me you had to understand everything. And that's what it was when I ran for office. Like, I felt I had to know everything. I think I knew too much. I would have been better off knowing a little less.
Did you like being in front of the people?
I loved the debates, and I'm a teacher, so I loved all of that.
That was good. What are some of the main issues that you had during your tenure?
Well, you have all the issues that face a city. You have taxes, you have infrastructure, etc. But the difference when you are on a 40-member board, where that is district-wide, so you have a district, and that district has its own set of issues. So my district, the 16th district, the wonderful 16th district, needed sewers. And so the whole district needed sewers. Now, we're going back 21 years. And there was only a very small part of the city that was sewered. And sewers started to define my life because I had to figure out how to get a whole district that didn't have one sewer anywhere sewered. And that meant lobbying for money. It meant getting my district ahead of every other district and all that other stuff. And, you know, those little mundane things totally encompass you when you're on the Board of Reps. And then the bigger issues of taxes and education, because many education issues came before the Board of Reps, including the Board of Education budget, which I was very protective of. So those were the main things.
Tell me, what was the proudest moment of your political career?
All right, I had a whole lot of proud moments. One of the proudest, I'm going to give you two. One when I started my political life, and the other when I ended it. So I'll give you the end first. When I lost the election to Stan Esposito, the election for mayor to Stan, it was a horrible thing for me. And we were in this huge Ladden's Terrace, which at that time was where all the Democrats held their political fundraisers or what is the word I'm looking for? Or anything that had to do with politics, their conventions. Everything was held at Ladden's Terrace. So my husband and I and my two daughters are in the back room with a whole bunch of our supporters seeing the returns, and in the front room, this vast room, were the people who supported me who were waiting for the results. And by the time I came out to give a concession speech, they all knew, of course, that I had lost. And I walked out on that stage, and in front of me were thousands of people who had supported my everything I had done during my whole political career, but more so during the campaign. And I was so moved that it took some of the sting out of losing, but it also added something. What it added was I felt that I had let everyone down by losing. So it was the yin and the yang. Oh my God, I love you all for being here. Oh my God, I let you down. But it was an incredible thing. And it stayed in my mind for years. These beautiful faces of people just crying and cheering at the same time. So that's one. And I also had run a very good campaign, even though I had lost, and we had spoken about issues. So my proud moment and my politics is the art of the possible. So now you go back to 1976. How many years ago was that?
You want me to tell you?
Yeah, Ann, you're the mathematician.
39.
So, okay. So I am, it's hard to believe, I am appalled because during the campaign for the Board of Representatives, I found out that the votes were private, that the public did not know how any member of the board voted for anything. Every vote was a closed vote. So in my campaign, I campaigned on opening the voting system, letting fresh air into our Board of Representatives. So I'm brand new, and I get on the board, and this was my campaign promise, and I was going to keep my campaign promise, and I make a motion when we're talking about the rules of the board, that all votes taken on the Board of Representatives be open. Now, I didn't do any research, I didn't know how anybody felt. The people on that board, to me, as a 28-year-old, were 70 and ready to die, you know, old. And they booed me down. It was, I couldn't believe it. It was the most like, oh, what, girly, and that's really what girly, sit down, you don't know what you're talking about. If we vote, if people know how we voted, we'll make enemies. All right, that was what they thought. So I was proud that I made the motion, but I was prouder still that during the next election, so it's just 2 years later, I had converted that whole board to voting in favor of open voting on Board of Reps, and that was a 2-year accomplishment.
Bet it was.
So that was a proud moment, and like my first real thing.
Now, what was your most regrettable moment? I think you already spoke about.
Yeah, losing the election. I literally felt afterwards that I was sitting shiva. That's the best way of describing it. I was so saddened at the loss, and I didn't want to go out because every time I saw anybody, it was, oh, Sandy, I voted for. First of all, if everybody who told me they voted for me really voted for me, I would have won. But most of the people who I saw who said they voted for me did, and you know, it was, oh, Sandy, I'm so sad, I'm so sad. So every place I went, people would say they were so sad. So I didn't want to go out. But you kind of, you get over it. You get over it and you go on to the next thing.
We were talking, being Jewish, you feel, was either a help or a hindrance in your political career, but you've already said.
It was not a help.
No.
Being Jewish is a help in determining who I am and what I stand for, because to me Judaism stands for so much that is wonderful for your family and wonderful for the community and wonderful for the political arena. But being Jewish did not help me. It did not help Lynn Laitman when she ran for mayor.
Didn't help me.
Right. So but having said that, I wouldn't change being Jewish for anything.
Are your children in politics at all?
My children are very active Democrats, but not into politics. They're very strong Democrats.
Now, I'm going to ask you, what legacy did you leave behind from there? And then I want you to talk about what you've done for the city.
All right. To me, my best legacy is not the sewers on Rollingwood Drive and the rest of the 16th District. To me, my legacy was 10 years as president of that board and fashioning a board that didn't meet from 6 p.m. to 4 a.m., but in putting together a committee system, analyzing things appropriately, having discussion, knowing when to terminate discussion, knowing, those were the things I brought to the board. Having legislative seminars so people who were elected to the board understood what they were responsible for. So once again, it was all my teaching, leadership skills. Those were the things I loved doing most on the board, and I think that was much more the legacy. And one thing that I forgot, I am a consensus builder. So getting people to do what I consider the right thing and vote for important things like purchasing the government center. We didn't always own the government center. We were in this little municipal office building, a small building. We couldn't do the business of the city. That was enormous. People wanted to be all over, and I had to form a consensus to get the people to buy that government center, etc. So building consensus was important. Organizing the Board of Reps was important. And they were long projects.
Now I'd like you to talk about what you do now.
Well, so now I'm president of Stamford Downtown. That is a business improvement district, and it is responsible, its responsibilities are to revitalize the downtown. I've been in that position now for 21 years, and I love every day that I go to work. When I took over the downtown, now this is so not a me thing, this is an organizational thing. This organization was formed because it is the best way to get things done, get appropriate things done in a small area. So the small area was defined as the downtown, and the people who own property in that downtown, after voting in favor of forming this district, are then obligated in perpetuity to paying taxes to that district in addition to the taxes they pay to the city. Therefore, you have a pool of money that you can work with to enhance the environment through flowers, through patrols, through street cleaning, through security patrols. And you have an entity that you put together to put on events like the Great Giant Balloon Parade, like the Alive at 5 concerts, like the Jazz of July concerts, etc., like the Sculpture in the Street, which I'm working on right now. So, and then we have retail recruitment and retention responsibilities. At any rate, we went from a city that was really dead to a downtown area that is vibrant and alive. And still, you know, to me, I look at a smile and I only see the gaps in the smile, but I know that it has come a long way. And there's a terrific team of personnel and board of directors working to make this downtown great, and hence the city a better place.
You've done a wonderful job, and I want to thank you so much for the interview.
Oh, pleasure. A pleasure. My pleasure.